A standoff is brewing between Labor and the Greens on the government's proposed changes to the safeguard mechanism. For its support, the Greens want a ban on new coal and gas projects. The Climate Change and Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, though, has made it clear he's not willing to budge.
I won't be agreeing to things which are not in keeping with our election mandate. But just like with the climate bill, just like our electric vehicle tax cut, just like everything else we've done, people of good faith have suggestions which are complementary to the government's agenda, in keeping with our mandate, then I'm all ears. But things which are not in keeping with our mandate, I will not be accepting. I've made that very clear to the Greens, but I look forward to further discussions.
Joining me now live is Greens leader Adam Bandt. Thanks very much for your time. The government now putting it back on you. It won't consider banning new coal and gas. So is this a red line? Does this mean this won't pass?
Well, I don't think the government's position is ultimately tenable. I mean, we've got our Pacific Island neighbours saying, please stop opening up coal and gas mines because it threatens our very existence. We've got the UN Secretary General saying, got to stop opening coal and gas mines. We've got the International Energy Agency, the world scientists. You've got the government now saying it wants to host a climate summit here, which we support. And yet, on the other hand, saying they want to keep opening new coal and gas mines and making the problem worse. Now, I don't think the government's position is ultimately tenable, and I think they'd get a lot of support from people if they said, yeah, we're going to stop making the problem worse, we're going to stop pouring petrol on the fire, we're going to stop opening new coal and gas projects.
So that's your view, and that's fair enough, but Labor's made its view clear. Will you not budge? Is this a red line for you? If they will not include a provision to stop new coal and gas, you won't support this?
Well, we're happy. We will continue to have good faith discussions with the government. We want to see if we can reach an outcome here, and those negotiations, I'm prepared to spend my time and my effort seeing if we can get a resolution so we can get climate action.
But what does that mean? Does that mean, if not this, maybe something like a climate trigger that could be explored? Are you saying you're willing to look outside of this measure?
Well, I want the government to explain why. Like, sure, they can get up and say no, but that's not how you have discussions, and that's not how you have negotiations. The government's got to explain to us and to the Australian people why they're willing to hold up their own climate scheme because they want to keep opening new coal and gas mines.
There's no explanation they'll give you.
That beggars belief.
There's no explanation they give you that would be satisfactory, is there?
Well, I want to hear them justify their case. If this is about a negotiation and this is about saying we want to get climate action done, we've put a proposal on the table that says, look, there's a lot of concerns we got with their scheme. The fact that you can offset all your pollution and keep on polluting, the fact that it's Tony Abbott's design scheme, that it's got its low targets. We've said we're prepared to put those issues aside and support it on the basis that they stop making the problem worse.
They've said no to that. So is it no to the bill, or would you look at the other areas you don't like and perhaps change one of them instead?
Well, we'll go into those discussions. We'll go into those discussions in good faith. I hear what the government is saying, but you know, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to actually persuade the population and the parliament that your position is reasonable. And that's the onus is on the government now to explain why the single most important thing for them is to keep opening new coal and gas mines in a climate crisis.
But you're not walking away, so it seems like you'd be open to explore other avenues perhaps. Change the bill in your view to make it better, even if you can't change this aspect of it?
Well, we're always open to have good faith discussions. You saw us have those good faith discussions on the climate legislation. We passed that. We did it on electric vehicles. We've done it on a number of other areas. We've been willing to move away from the position that we would like to see implemented in full to ensure that we get some action. Now, the onus is on the government now. I mean, the government does not have a majority in the Senate. If the government wants to get legislation through, it may well start with its position, but at some point, they've got to understand they don't have a majority in the Senate. We're up for working together, and I've got to say, I'm not sure the government is saying they're going to hold up their whole climate program because they want to keep opening coal and gas mines. I don't think they've thought through. But how is Tanya Plibersek going to explain that to people in Sydney? What about opening coal and gas mines is the most important thing Labor wants to do?
What about just on gas though? Because we don't have any new gas. We've had repeated warnings we'd run short domestically within a couple of years. What then?
Well, this is part of the reason that we were willing to support the government last year to have the powers now to ensure that gas is reserved domestically. Generally, we haven't supported a domestic reservation approach. We don't want to slow down the transition. The government now has the power to ensure that there's enough gas, including during the transition.
But that would...
And even the most ardent advocates of gas aren't saying that we need new gas to make the transition, right? There's enough in the system.
Well, there are supporters
already
saying that we need it because we have these things called export contracts. So are you saying no new gas, and even if that means we have to cancel some export contracts, we use what gas we need, the rest can be exported? Is that what you do?
What we're saying is, why is the International Energy Agency that represents the gas industry, coal industry, etc., why are they saying that to meet net zero goals, we can't open up any new coal, oil or gas projects, right?
But they look at the world, I suppose. But in Australia, if we don't get new gas supplies, we'll run short domestically, and we'd either be short on power, basically, or using gas, or we'd have to cancel export contracts. So would you have us cancel export contracts?
I haven't heard anyone actually come up with numbers that suggest that that's the case. Like, Australia is awash with gas at the moment. The problem is, successive governments have turned a blind eye. They've let the international price be the domestic price, and people and businesses are hurting.
So that's the point, though. But you'd limit, in whatever way, you'd limit export of.
Well, the government has the power now. The government has the power now to say that they're going to reserve it, in part because we gave it to them, that we're going to reserve it for people at home. So I just don't accept that that's a reason not to stop opening new gas markets.
Social housing, we'll just get to this quickly. Again, you want more social housing. That's what the government bill will do, but it's not getting it enough. So would you consider not supporting it if that were the case?
Under Labor's bill, the problem gets worse. Like, at the end of this Labor's plan, after they've spent the money, they've got the waiting list and the gap for housing is going to be bigger than it is now.
And I've seen you say this because there's
nothing
the
there for
shortfall is
renters.
growing bigger than the number of houses they're putting in.
And part of there's nothing in there for renters, and part of the reason is the way that they've structured this fund is that there's no guaranteed minimum spend. They're putting $10 billion into gamble on the stock market through the Future Fund. Last year it lost money. That would mean no money spent on housing.
It's a pretty unusual year.
If you put and they put a cap on how much they will spend.
Well, that's so you preserve the fund. But again, I know you're saying the problem gets worse, but if you don't do this, the problem is worse again. So it's either, at the moment, it's either this, which might take the edge off the problem, or nothing at all.
Well, renters are hurting right now. The government has said this is their centrepiece housing program. This is going to be their biggest intervention. This is our chance to get it right. We need a plan that makes the problem better, not worse. We're up for the discussions.
But does it make it worse?
We're up for the discussions.
If this doesn't go ahead versus going ahead, it's better for housing stocks if this happens.
Their bill.
You're saying it doesn't improve it enough, but it doesn't take away funding, it adds funding.
Well, it's a pretty amazing bill that if you pass it, the gap and the waiting list is going to be longer at the end of it. That's the situation that we find ourselves
at the end of it.
But Labor has said...
But it is more funding.
This is their main plan, they've said. Well, in any given year, there might be zero funding because that's how they've structured the bill. We'll have discussions with them about that. We're willing to work on that. We'll keep doing it.
We'll do so and perhaps talk next sitting period when the Senate will be mulling these things over as well. Adam Bandt, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.